Today I am going to deal with corporate social responsibility in the process of procurement. So, corporate social responsibility in the process of procurement. As in the public sector, private sector organizations include the corporate social responsibility. So, with the increased awareness about the environmental issues, sustainability, community welfare, consumers are increasingly concerned about the corporate social responsibility about the goods and the services provided for them in order to purchase, whereas private sectors have to ensure that they procure ethically and sustainably as a part of their CSR policy. An organization's reputation can easily be damaged, so it is important that all the actions are considered and ethical are correct behavior and is always followed. Private sector organizations often set improving corporate social responsibilities as part of their overall strategies. This could be done by setting the objectives such as using sustainable suppliers, using recycled packaging, donating a percentage of their profit to the local charity, contributing towards a community project. Whereas the public and the private sector organizations can work together on a shared initiative to promote the corporate social responsibility policies and improve local, nationals, and globals awareness and an action to offer common on a common causes. Regulations that impact on procurement and supply chain operations as you have learned earlier, regulations surrounding the public sector are much more stringent, whereas compared to private sector, they're not so strict on the numerous one. Whereas yes, these private sectors still have to follow the guidelines in order to promote the good practices in the procurement and supply chain operations, whereas public sector no. Whereas unlike public sector, many regulations for private sector are set internally, and as a result, organizations may follow different regulations, whereas in private sector, internal regulations are likely to be around the following criteria. What are those following criteria? We are dealing here with the procurement. So, in relation to the procurement process, the internal regulations are SIP's Code of Conduct, which is Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supplies Code of Conduct, then Code of Ethics, anti-bribery policy, sustainability policy, environmental awareness, transparency, and accountability. These are the various regulations which, as a corporate social responsibility, the private as well as the public sector organizations should follow in the process of procurement. When we talk about the regulations and the standards that the private sector must comply with are limited but include those summarized one. Those standards are or regulations are International Labour Organization, International Organization and Standardization, Consumer Rights Act 2015, General Data Protection Regulation, Health and Safety Regulation, Transport Driving Regulations. These are the various regulations and the informations which private sector has as a regulation and a standard and are mandatory to be followed with. That's what we say. They are complied to be followed with. Then coming on to difference between the public and the private sector. When we talk about the public sector, definitely public sector has less flexibility and private sectors have more flexibility, whereas public sector contracts are more often pre-written or they can be by scope, whereas contracts in private sector are by scope. Then limited negotiations in public sector, freedom to negotiate in private sector. Informations are shared openly in the public sector, whereas private, it is confidential. Right? Relationships are harder to manage in public sector, where it becomes confidentialities are there. In private sector, you can spend more time to manage your relationships. Procurement workers' salaries are predetermined, whereas in private sector, no, there are negotiations are there and they can definitely innovations are promoted much more in the private sector as compared to public sector, whereas procurement workers are can negotiate on their salaries. Importance of the role of branding in case of the procurement in private and public sector, there are various is things, different elements of organization of brand, which includes what are those which definitely creates much more importance to the procurement process is advertising, marketing, trust, identity, value, design, logo, and strategy. Depending on the sectors, definitely the brand functions reflect values in a positive way to engage the consumers, and in private and public sector both work differently. Whereas a brand informs consumers about the three basic things: what the product is, what the product can do, why the product is the desired choice of the customer or the consumers. So these are the things which are being discussed in this particular session. Thank you.